Can you hear me gulping when I have a mic on?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try not to do that. Well, our lesson today is on, I'm calling it the gifts of spirit. But we have so many gifts within us, so many gifts that we were born. We came into this world actually already prepped with everything we need to call forth the gifts. But I can remember the first time somebody told me, oh, you were created to create as your creator, because you're created in the image and likeness of your creator. And as God creates in the whole, we are to create in our own lives. And I was like, yeah, I can't do that. I don't have what it takes to do that. And I discovered that this is a reason why mythology stories are so important to us. And have you noticed that stories from mythology, like especially the Greek gods and goddesses, sometimes they were great, and sometimes they were horrible, like horrible people. Zeus could be a terrible person when he came down to our planet and pretended to be a man, right? His wife Hera, she could be the best mother. In fact, she's known as one of the greatest mother goddesses. She could also be vengeful and vindictive and bitter. And the thing is that these stories, they're not about some sky daddy or gods living on a mountain. These are stories about what's working through us. Like, we can choose to be vindictive. We can choose to be like the best version of ourselves ever. And I think that this is why teacher Yeshua taught so many parables. Because when we hear a parable, right, especially like a parable of the prodigal son, right, that was the story that like affected me so much. When I first heard it and I was taking it literally, I was just like, well, so who cares, right? He was a rich guy. He lost all his money. I can't, connect with that story. But when we hear something as a parable or as a story from mythology, it sneaks past our ego self. It sneaks past our little me where we want to argue with it. Like when we want to argue how like we're here to create more good in our lives. If we feel like we can't do it. We want to argue against even the idea that God is all things and that God is infinite. Because we will look at something happening outside in our world and we'll think, well, but there's this bad thing. There's these horrible things going on. And so we argue all the time, but when we hear a story, when we hear something from mythology, when we hear a parable, it sneaks in and we can receive that hidden gem. There's even a point in the book of Job where the Lord is speaking and says, sometimes I have to come and give men messages while they're dreaming, because only when they're dreaming, they're not so stubborn. They're not so stubborn that they can't hear the message. So I'm going to be talking to you today about the gifts that are within us, but as told through an old Celtic story, right? The Celtic people have their own pantheon of gods and goddesses too, and they could be every bit as awful and wondrous as any other pantheon of gods and goddesses around the world. So here's how the story starts off. Once upon a time, there were these gods and goddesses, and they decided to settle in Ireland. They thought Ireland was the most beautiful place they could settle. So they kicked out the previous inhabitants, which the previous inhabitants were a little monstrous themselves. They didn't like this and they didn't appreciate it, but what could they do? So they got kicked out of Ireland. So the gods and goddesses settled, they created a beautiful kingdom, and then like little mini kingdoms all over Ireland. Well, one day there's this young man named Lou. And Lou decides to go to the High King. He wants to be in service to the king. So he arrives at the kingdom, and he's met with the gatekeeper. And the gatekeeper says, well, you can't come in unless you have something to offer that makes this a better place. What is the gift that you have to bring that will make the kingdom prosper more, have more abundance, more love, more good? What is it that you have to bring? And so Lou says, well, I am a master carpenter. And it was true, he was a master carpenter. But the gatekeeper says, we've got plenty of carpenters. We don't need another carpenter. Lou says, well, I am a master smithy. And he was a master smithy. He's not lying about this. He's telling the truth. But the gatekeeper says, we've got plenty of smithies here. We don't need another one. Lou says, well, I'm a physician. And he says, well, we've already got plenty of healers and physicians and midwives. So, we don't need another one. Lu says, well, I'm a warrior. The gatekeeper, he probably said, this is Ireland. Everybody's a warrior. So Lu says, okay, I'm a bard. I'm a harpist. I'm a poet. I'm a storyteller. And the gatekeeper says, well, again, we've got plenty of bards, harpists, poets, storytellers. We don't need another one. So Lu finally says, do you have one person here who's a carpenter, a master smith, a physician, a warrior, a bard, harpist, storyteller, poet? And the gatekeeper thinks for a second, and he says, well, come on in. Right? Welcome to the kingdom. So Lu gets to serve the High King. His name is King Nuada. And he becomes really important to the king, and the king can count on him. He believes in Lu. In fact, he's also kind of grooming Lu to become the next High King. And then the king gets news that they're going to be invaded, again, by the people who they originally gave the boot. So he tells Lu, we've got to prepare for war. I need you to go into the unseen realms. And like in Greek mythology, it might have been like Mount Olympus or something like that. In Greek, or in Celtic mythology, it would be called the Shining Realms. And so he wants Lu to go to the Shining Realms to get the 4 gifts from the Shining Realms, right? For the gods and goddesses who didn't come down to the planet. They're called the four treasures of the fairy, and not fairy like cute little Tinkerbells. The Celtic fairies could actually be monstrous and dangerous. They just meant otherworldly being. So Lu goes and he collects all 4 gifts. He's able to do this. He brings them back to to King Nuada, and they go to battle. Now the first gift was the gift of a sword. Ta-da, the sword. It was the sword that nothing could stand against. So King Nuada could hold this sword before him, and even if 100 trolls came rushing at him, they could not overcome the sword. Nothing could overcome this sword. And so King Nuada won every single battle that he was personally involved in because of this sword. Now, Lu, he got what was called the spear that always hit its target. Now, all Lu had to do was keep in mind who his target was, some foe. Now, the foe could have ran over the hill and through the valley and around the bend and through the woods, but if Lu focused on this foe as his target, he could just throw the spear and the spear would hit it. Okay, the spear always hit its target. Now, next was the Cauldron of Plenty. Now, the cauldron could bring forth anything you could need in that moment. The cauldron could feed all of Ireland. And so anytime during this battle, if somebody came to the cauldron in need of food, the cauldron would give them food. If they were in need of drink, the cauldron would give them drink. And the thing is about this cauldron that was so amazing is you couldn't eat from it, you couldn't drink from it, you couldn't receive a gift from it without feeling overwhelming thankfulness. Okay, so these were the first 3 gifts. Now what happened was, in this battle, they did win. But King Nuada, unfortunately, he lost his hand. Or he wasn't paying attention. Somebody cut off his hand. Now at the time, back in those days, which I don't know how long ago that was, but back in those days, the High King of Ireland had to be whole in body and mind and spirit. This was the law. And King Nuada abided by the laws set forth. He lived in integrity. He was a wonderful ruler, and he could have changed the law, right? He could have decided, well, the law applies to the people, but not me, but he was in integrity. So he stepped down from the throne, and King Lu stepped forward then to be the next High King. And this is where they used the 4th gift, and it was called the Stone of Truth. This is also known as the Leophael. The Stone of Truth, when a man would stand upon this stone, the stone would cry out the truth about him, whether he was the High King or not. And so Lu stood upon the stone, and it cried out the truth. He was the next high king. Now, of course, back in those days, like when there was a new king, coming to be coronated, the whole kingdom would gather around. And so Lu not only heard the stone cry out and that it was ordained, it was his birthright to be the next high king, but every person in the kingdom also heard this. And so this made Lu a better king. It made any king a better king because it was ordained, right? They knew it was ordained, so they just knew without a doubt. They were meant to be the king. Okay, so Lu became the next king, and he was a good one. And there are a lot of stories about him that you could read also. But see, this story is also a metaphor. Story is also a metaphor, as really great stories are. And it started with someone, Lu, knocking on the door of the kingdom, seeking to share his gifts and stepping into service for the king and calling forth the treasures. He called forth the 4 treasures. And with the 4 treasures, they were able to conquer the obstacles, right? Conquer the invading forces. And this is our journey too. This is our journey that we're on. We all came to this planet to call forth the gifts of spirit, to call forth the gifts into our life. We came here to be the way of God in this world. And so the goodness comes through us, for us, as us, and it goes out into our life and into the lives of the people that we love and care about. And then it keeps going. This is how we expand our territory. Okay, remember the prayer of Jabez. Please expand my territory. This is so we can do more good than what we think is possible. See, this is what this whole journey is all about. We're discovering, we think at the beginning of this that we're not all that. We think we're not enough. And what we do is we discover that we are more than what we ever imagined we were. And this is the hero's journey. So we acknowledge the gifts that we have to call forth through us by acknowledging that we are the way of God in this world. So we have those tools, and so let's look at these tools as a metaphor now. We've got the sword. Nothing can stand against it, not even 100 trolls. So what are the trolls? They are our invading thoughts. They are our doubts and our worries and our judgments. But there's a spiritual truth here that nothing can stand against us because God is all things. God is all things. That means everything that's ever been, everything that's yet to be. And each of us are the divine expression of God walking around in this world. We're the physical activity of God in this world. And that's why we say, oh, I'm the hands, I'm the heart, I'm the feet of God in this world, right? It's how we can say that. God is all things, which means there are not actually opposing forces. There are things in our life that we may not like, but the sword, right? Even 100 trolls cannot overcome the sword. Our understanding that God is all things, that is our sword. That is our sword. So no matter the 100 trolls that are in our life, we're still focused on, okay, God is all things, and that means me, but that also means that God's at work out there in these conditions and around the world. God is at work, and in my neighbor, God is at work everywhere and in everything, which means solutions can come from surprising places we've never imagined, because God is all things. All right, next we have, so the spiritual truth, of course, here is God is all things. Next we have the invincible spear that always hits its mark, even if our target is over the hill and around through the valley and into the woods. Okay, our target is our happy outcome that we desire to see in our life, our embodying our I am consciousness, our Christ consciousness. Our target is inner peace. Our target is calling forth more love for ourselves so we can call forth more love for others. Our target extends out into the experiences that we want to create in our life. So first we have our sword that 100 trolls cannot even overcome, right? And so our sword keeps us from focusing on all of the problems, all of the ways in our life that we're not seeing our target yet, right? Because our inner peace is over the hill and through the valley and into the forest, right? We don't see it yet. But the sword helps to clear our focusing on the trolls out there. And then we have our spear then to just zoom in on our target. Our target is to express our I am consciousness. Our target is to be the way of God in this world, calling forth the good. We are the way of good to come into this world. Without the spear, without focusing, we may have our target. Oh, yes, I want to create inner peace in my life. But what about that thing out there? And this over here, I just can't handle how this is happening. And then it was like the birds were chirping so loud this morning, right? And so all of a sudden we're focusing on all of these things in our life. You have one spear and you have 50,000 targets. If you have one spear, what if you have one spear and 100 trolls? And what if you only got one spear? There are 99 trolls. Even with really good aim, there's still 99 trolls left. Right? So we're not focusing on the trolls, our fears, our doubts. We focus on our target. Even when we cannot see it yet in our life, even if we're not yet reaping the benefits of it existing in our life, our spear always hits our target. So the gift here of the spear really is that we have the ability to choose our thoughts. That's what this gift is. We get to choose our thoughts. I know what it's like to like go on social media or something in the morning or watch the news and I'm going to list out 50 things that are just scaring the crap out of me right now, right? We could all do that. But we can also choose to instead seek God at work in all things. Seek the activity of God. Seek to be the way of God in this world, right here and right now. Okay, so then we have the Cauldron of Plenty. This is thankfulness. Remember this cauldron? It could feed anybody or give anybody anything anyone needed. And so I see the cauldron also as a gift of grace. That's what grace is. We don't have to earn it, but whatever it is that we need, it's already available for us. But we have to seek God first. We have to see the truth of God in all things. And so the Cauldron of Plenty, we can't eat from it or drink from it or receive from it without also experiencing tremendous gratitude in our lives. Gratitude is transformative to us. When we experience gratitude, it changes our consciousness. Maybe sometimes it's just for a little bit, right? But it changes our consciousness for a little bit so that we can remember, okay, God is all things. That's everything that's ever been, everything yet to be. That's the first gift. And then I can choose to only focus on my target. I can choose to seek the truth of God in all things. I can choose to just focus on embodying the love and compassion of Christ in this world, of God in this world, of good in this world. So gratitude, it does transform us. So gratitude, there's another kind of magical thing about gratitude, and I only learned this a few years ago. It's giving thanks for something as if it's already true, okay? Now, when we are thinking about something we want to have in our lives, when we want it, it's not here yet, but we really want it, those 100 trolls will come in, right, and get in the way. You're not going to get this. You know why? It's because it's too expensive, or you didn't learn enough things in school, or you're not, whatever, right? So we think about something we want, and the trolls get in the way. In Unity, we call that the little me, but I don't even think of my little me's not a troll, but, trolls are funny. So that's gratitude. When we give gratitude, have gratitude for something as if it's already happened. And it just takes a few minutes. Just imagine it, and feel it like it already did come true. Our little me, right, the little me that likes to get in the way, or if you want to see it as the trolls, they think it's already been done. They don't know the difference. Our ego does not know the difference between something that is real in our environment or something that we're just thinking. Which is why we can think ridiculous things about ourselves and act like it's true in this world, like I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. We can actually believe all that because our ego will agree with us and tell us it's true, even when it's not. But we can use this to our advantage by having gratitude for things that are not yet true, but we know they will be. Okay? Like we can give thanks for a beautiful sunset tonight. Right? You know it will be. You know it's coming. You're not going to worry about it. You're not going to think, well, I don't know, did I study enough spiritual stuff so the sunset will come tonight? You're not going to worry about it. Okay, so there's gratitude. Finally, we have the last gift, which was the stone of destiny. Okay, remember the king, Lu, before he became king, he stood on this stone and it cried out the truth about him, that he was destined, he was ordained to be the next high king. And it made him a better king because he knew this now beyond a shadow of a doubt. How would you feel if you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that the life you dream about creating is the life you are ordained to create? How would you feel if you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was higher forces that ordained you to call forth greater good into your lives for yourself and for others, to call forth love and beauty and truth and being a good example and being creative and having curiosity and being able to ask all the right questions? How would you feel if you knew beyond a truth you were divinely designed to be the way of God, be the way of good in this world? Like, that would change everything. But we so often think we need permission to do something first. You know, I remember when I first got into holistic healing, and I dreamt about, like, oh, we're going to have a big holistic healing center, right? What do you think, universe? Should I do that? And then I wouldn't hear anything, because I wasn't doing anything either, right? But I was like, well, I guess it's not meant to be. You know, I was waiting for the universe to give me the big burning bush type sign, so yes, you should open a holistic healing center. We wait for permission on things, but like if your inspired idea can't get you moving, if your inspired idea can't move you into action, if your inspired idea cannot motivate you to do the next best thing in your life, what is going to motivate you? Right? What is going to do that? Nothing. Nothing. I think even if I had Samuel L. Jackson yelling at me to do stuff, I would figure out a way to get out of it. Like I would have an excuse. We've got to follow what's in here. We're following inspiration from God. Like, where do we think that inspiration came from? And then we're doubting it? Well, I need another confirmation. Right? We doubt it. Let's see, do I have this verse? Look at this. This is from Philippians. For it is God who inspires you with the will to do the good things which you desire. Do all things without disputing and doubting. Okay, look at this, the will. For it is God who inspires you with the will. You know what our will is? That's supposed to be a W. You know what our will is? Our will is our ability to remember, all right, God is all things. There are really no opposing forces. I can imagine crazy things going on out here, but God is all things. If I seek the truth of God in all things, somewhere I'm making way for a solution. I may not know where it's coming from, right? If I can change something, I'll change something. If I have to rise above something, I rise above something. I mean, we can't control the world, right? But we can control our prayers and how we receive the prayers and how we act on the prayers. That's our will. Right? So we first were acknowledging, okay, yes, God is all things. Part of our will is also, oh, I was just complaining in my head about somebody. I was just judging something. I'm going to stop focusing on what other people are doing. Like, I don't know how God's working through everybody else. And it's not my job to tell God how to work through everybody else. Take my focus back to my desired outcome. Bring my focus back to focusing on the good, right? Whatever is lovely, whatever is kind. You know, whatever is good in the eyes of God. That's what we're here to focus on. We are the divine expressed. We are the activity of God in this world. Receiving divine inspiration, that's how we know the next right thing to do, because it's not just going to be shouted at us by Samuel L. Jackson. But that would be really cool. That would be really cool. So we don't need to wait for permission. There are a lot of disruptive forces in our lives. And I really feel like that's why we're here. We're getting better and better and better at calling forth the good. And so, like, if everything was just really smooth all the time, like, it would feel like we already won the game. And so now what next? And so, but instead, we're like have more new disruptive forces. And it's like, I can do this. I can do this. I can focus on the good. I can focus on seeking the truth of God in all things. I can do that. Like I did it for this other thing. I thought that thing was going to be hard. And now that I did it, it's like, it wasn't that bad. So now I know I can do it again. Even though it seems like this thing is going to be really hard, I know when I come out on the other side of it, I'll be like, yeah, I did it. And if I can do it, like literally if I can do something, I know everybody can. So here's the gift. Here's the gift. You are designed to be a creator. You are designed. You were designed to create as your creator. As God creates in the whole, we create in our own little universe. We're all given this little universe of our life to learn to manage. And it starts here. We manage our thoughts. We manage our thoughts. It starts here. And it starts right here in what we're doing every day. So here is our call to action. I like this affirmation. Let's say this together. I am the way of good in this world. Right? Let's say it one more time. I am the way of good in this world. That is so good. So there's one more component to this, right? We've got the 4 gifts, but there's also law. There's law. Okay, King Nuada lost his hand, and because he was in integrity with the law, he stepped down from being king. Because one law rules everybody. All right, now, law is mind in action. Mind in action. And I'll tell you, this took me a long time to really be able to get this. But here's law. In the beginning was the Word. Okay, and then think about your story from Genesis. Let there be light. What came then? Light. Okay, let there be light. And then came the light because of law. Right? What is originated in divine mind. You could say God thought everything into existence. So thinking first, let there be light, and then there was light. Okay, let there be our beautiful blue marble of a planet. And then there was a beautiful blue marble that we all call home. Okay, this is law. Law is cause and effect, right? What goes on in our mind first, then we are creating in our world. And it's how we are thinking about what we think about all the time. So when we seek the truth of God, when we are focusing on how we're going to create the good in our lives and what might that good in our life look like next? What can I change? Can I change it? Do I need to rise above something? Right? Seeking the truth of God in all things so we call forth solutions, then we'll experience harmony because that is the law. And this is really a good thing because we always know. If I walk in faith 100% of the time, if I walk in faith, things may not be easy. Like we were never given a promise, just walk in faith and life will be really easy. It's not. That's not the promise. The promise is that no matter what happens, if we walk in faith, we're going to call forth a solution from somewhere. Because it's the law. It's the law. It's also law that if we decide to be in a place of chaos in our mind and doubting and judging and worrying and complaining and blaming, what comes into our life is not harmony. Harmony cannot be expressed from that kind of thinking. Chaos is expressed from that kind of thinking. And so there is that part of this. This is law. Now, I know like in spiritual groups, when I first got into spiritual groups, New Agey groups, and they were really fun. But also there was this idea about spiritual bypassing. And so here's an example of when we might be thinking we can bypass this law. The law of mind, right? The law of cause and effect. Creating harmony or creating chaos or conflict. Say that we pray. It's like, I'm really worried about this, so I'm going to pray for it. I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to seek the truth of God in this. I see like the best good working through this, or I see a million angels surrounding the situation, or like however you want to pray about it. And then you're done with your prayer, and you walk out into your life, and you think, our world leaders are a bunch of idiots. This world, man, this chaos, man, I don't even know what kind of world my grandkids are going to live in because they're all idiots. Well, all we're doing now is we're creating conflict. So our prayer, what did we just do with our prayer? Right? We just disrespected our prayer. We disrespected that power that creates worlds. By going into chaos ourselves. So we can spiritually bypass things. I know I've done this, and I'll create a vision board, right? We love vision boards. And I'll put my little dream house on there, which is a little cottage or something. And then I have my Australian Shepherd, female, Blue Merle, puppy. And I look at this vision board, and I was like, oh yeah, there's my little dream house, and there's my puppy, and I'm feeling it. It feels really good. And then I walk out of my moment of sacredness. I was like, what is going on with all the housing prices? Like, I'm never going to get my cottage is going to be like $5 billion by the time I find it. Right? And Australian Shepherds. Why, when I had my first Australian Shepherd puppy, people thought she was really unusual. Right? And now it's like people are like, want them so badly, somebody else got my dog. And I'll walk around, I'm like, somebody got my dog. Somebody got my puppy. I was supposed to have my puppy 2 years ago, and I don't have my puppy. Spiritually bypassing. Right? I'm now creating conflict within me by going into those thoughts of doubt and worry and lacking faith. If I was walking in faith looks like my puppy is a little spark of the divine right now, floating around looking for her body. Right? I'd focus on that. I would just focus on what it was like to walk her. I'd feel that, what it's like to walk my dog. I feel myself being in my home. So this can happen. But see, the law is law. Is law. It's not just a good idea. It's the law. And this is part of our experience. But see, even if you just break down law to its most basic thing, God is all things. God's not limited. God's not finite. God is all things. So God is everywhere present. God is in the unseen. God is in everything that's ever been. God is everything that is still yet to be. That's the law right there. God is all things. So we choose to behave that way. We choose to work with that rather than trying to fight against it. I fought against it a lot. I have. Okay, but see, Lou did something pretty amazing for himself. He set a very good example because he lived by law, right? He sought, first of all, to enter the kingdom, and then he sought to call forth the treasures of the kingdom, and he sought to serve the kingdom. He overcame insurmountable things. I don't know how you feel about 100 trolls coming at you, but to me it feels really insurmountable, okay? And he eventually ended up being the high king, and all of that was ordained. Even our ancestors knew how important it was for us to change our thinking so we could change our lives. Our ancestors knew that. Okay, so here we remember there is that within us that not even 100 trolls can oppose. There is that within us that allows us to always hit our target. There's that within us that overflows with gratitude. There's that within us that knows the truth of us. That we are made in the image of our Creator. We are designed to create as our Creator, and it's the law. We are designed to create. We are designed to call forth more good into this life. It's the law. So there's really no end to the possibilities that are available to us when we seek the truth of God in all things, and that's how we are creating heaven on earth. So until next time, remember, you are divinely designed to do all of this stuff. You are the activity of God in this world. And every bit of good that you bring in, however that looks, that's what you were designed to call forth. The big stuff, the little stuff, stuff maybe we think it's not so important, but it's all important. It's all good because it's all good. It's all God. You are blessed in everything you do, and so it is.
Amen.
Amen. All right, we have a little minute.